Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Right, so hi Connor, how are you?
Hi, yeah, I'm very well, thanks. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Do you mind just like talking about who you are and what charity you're a part of, just for people watching?
Yeah, of course. I'm Conor. I work for the charity ReAct, which is the local supported charity at Hertfordshire Uni this year. So we support children and families throughout Hertfordshire who are caring for a child with a terminal illness. All of the families we support are financially disadvantaged, and we mainly help them through kind of the provision of basic essential equipment, and that can pretty much mean anything. So it can range from like top of the range equipment like specialist beds or wheelchairs or baths to the very basic essentials, just to improve a child's quality of life. So anything from like flooring to a washing machine, and even down to like clothing and bedding for certain children. And I suppose the support ReAct gives to these families, it can really kind of make a difference to their quality of life and their comfort and their dignity. And where possible, we try to provide greater independence for children as well.
Yeah, that's lovely. So when did it start? When did React become a charity? Maybe like what's the story behind how it came about? Because I think a lot of people, although we're all Hertfordshire students, I think a lot of people
Mhm.
probably haven't heard of React, so it would just be nice to get a bit of
Yeah,
context.
we're a relatively small charity. So we do operate kind of on a national level, but we kind of have projects. We have a project in Hertfordshire, and all the funds raised for ReAct by Hertfordshire students will be used for families living in Hertfordshire. But we celebrated our 30th birthday last year.
Oh,
So we started in 1989. Yeah, we've been going for quite a while. We were founded by a local philanthropist called Irving Young. And so during the 1980s, that was kind of at the beginning of the AIDS pandemic, I'm sure you're aware. And he was inspired to start a charity to help children living with the AIDS virus. And so he wasn't particularly experienced in the field of kind of setting up a charity. So he spoke with Sister Frances Dominica, who was very renowned at the time and still is, for having set up the world's first children's hospice. And so they spoke together about this charity idea and setting up a children's charity. And she pointed out to him that in her hospice, she'd noticed, um, because the families only really have respite for a few weeks in the year, maybe about 4 weeks on average. The other 48 weeks, children are being cared for at home by their families. And Sister Frances had observed that many of them are struggling with the costs associated with caring for a terminally ill child at home. So you've got like the added cost of equipment, the loss of jobs and earnings for parents who have to give up work to become full-time carers for their child. Most terminal illnesses do require 24-hour care and support, and especially we get families applying to us sometimes who are single parents, and just it's impossible, and they can only rely on income support benefits to to live on and to provide for their child. So yeah, Sister Frances, going back to that, she talked to him about that, and so he was inspired then to set up a charity to provide any basic essential need for terminally ill children being cared for at home specifically. And yeah, to this day, that's still exactly what we do. And also Sister Frances is still very much involved in the charity. She's on our board of trustees and has been a patron for many years.
oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I think I know of some people who are students here at Hearts, but they also are carers. So that's a massive
Oh,
commitment.
really? Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
so
it's absolutely, yeah, it's huge.
yeah, and it's obviously that is something that, on top of your studies, that's such an immense sort of challenge to balance the two out and just kind of also having time for yourself as well. So I think a lot of people appreciate what you guys do.
Oh,
And I
definitely. It's incredible what some of the families are going through, and just the attitude for many of the parents as well. They're going through like the unimaginable grief and devastation of knowing that their child's terminally ill, but their motivation, their drive to just provide the best possible life for their child is really inspiring.
100%, yeah. And just following on from that, I mean, I think a lot of people would want to know about your impact. And, you said that you've been around for 30 years. It'd be quite nice to know, like, what sort of impact you've had. And I think it's important for other people to note that just because, you know, even on local scale, it makes such a difference to people's lives. Like, it doesn't really matter about the size of the charity, everything makes a difference. So I think that would be something nice to touch on. And if you have any examples that you could like give to illustrate what's happened to
Yeah,
benefit
of course.
people.
I mean, it's in some ways it's a fairly niche charity, but in other ways not. There's a huge demand for the work we do. We're constantly receiving applications from families, you know, just trying to better their lives with their child. And you know, we've helped thousands of families throughout the years. Every year we get more than, you know, 1,500 or so applications, and we respond to all of them within 48 hours as well. And yeah, we get, you know, we get some great feedback from families. They like to send us photos, and you know, you can see some of the stories in our recent newsletter, but I'll give you one as an example. I think I touched on this briefly when we did the Zoom talk a few weeks ago, but quite recently we had an application from a family caring for a girl. She's 14 years old, and she has a condition called spinal muscular atrophy, which is a muscle wasting disease. And it's a very sad disease because in many of the cases, you know, the child will fully develop into, you know, a perfectly able-bodied person, and then gradually over time lose the ability, you know, to walk and to move independently. But you know, she's a very smart girl, you know, very driven and very happy. But she was only cared for by her grandparents. And very sadly as well, her grandfather also saw a decline in his health. So for the past few years, her grandmother has been the sole carer for both Layla and her grandfather. So yeah, it's difficult in that respect. And because of the scoliosis that she developed in her spine, she was only able to be turned over. She had to be turned over during the night every single hour to stop potential injury and to provide comfort as well. And her grandmother was having to do that, literally lift her up and turn her every single hour. So they spoke to their occupational therapist, who recommended the use of a specialist bed. It's a turning bed, so it would give her the ability to turn herself independently during the night, which would not only provide her with a bit more privacy, but also provide her grandmother with, you know, it would spare her the exhausting regime of waking up every hour during the night. And she's in her 70s as well, and this is a 14-year-old, you know, fully grown, almost adult in this regard. But this bed was more than £8,000, and with their family just living on the pension of her grandmother, you know, it was just completely beyond the realm of possibility for them funding it. But thankfully, they did speak with the occupational therapist, who was aware of RaG's and what we do, and they made a referral to us. And you know, as soon as we saw the application and read about and heard about what they were going through, we were delighted to help. And that's certainly at the more sort of top of the range end of things you do. But I thought that was a really sort of nice way that we helped, and a good example of why it's not just the child that you can really help, but also everyone involved in their care.
Yeah, I mean, that story in particular, having one person be the sole carer for two people, I think that's an extremely strenuous thing. So for you guys to be able to provide even like small bits of support, or like, or in this case, a massive bit of support, it's just amazing to see how their lives have now changed, and you've made their life so much easier. So that's such an amazing thing to be a part of. And we're obviously really happy that you're our local charity for the year. So yeah, that's something that we really hope to raise money to have more stories like that where we can help you. I was just wondering whether COVID has had an impact on your work, and whether, you know, it's caused more people to need your care, or whether less people need your care, or I was just wondering whether that's made any negative difference for you.
Yeah, I mean, of course, you know, it's had a huge impact on all of us. It has certainly had a big impact on the charity and all the families we help. That's why I could give you a recent example. There's a story in our newsletter, actually. This boy, Toby, he's 4 years old. He's got scoliosis of the spine. He's got a genetic disease. Let me just see, I've got it written down. It's a DYNC1H1 gene mutation. And it basically means that is unable to kind of do anything for himself. He requires care for all of his needs. Yeah, so when COVID happened, he was being looked after mainly by his mum, who's a full-time carer, and they were living on their dad's wage, who works in a pub. And so once the pubs reopened and his dad went back to work, because they have to shield Toby from the virus as much as possible, and because they're so vulnerable, all of the RaG's children, from that point forward, he was just not allowed to see his father at all, because he's working in a pub. Even if it's socially distanced, there's still that risk there, and so they had to keep him shielded. And they're still in isolation now, and he's been looked after by his mum by herself in total isolation since July, I suppose, when the pubs reopened. So they came to us because they were applying for a buggy. They had a buggy that was just not really suitable. Toby's mum was having to sort of roll up a jumper and stuff it down to provide the support that he needed. And thankfully, because they do live in a rural area, so they were able to get out and about. Toby loves being in the outdoors, and they knew of places to go where they wouldn't come into contact with anyone else. But yeah, they needed a buggy really, because in doing so, even though he loved being out in the outdoors, it was very uncomfortable for him sort of going over the bumpy terrain. So we were really happy to provide them with a new buggy which provides postural support for Toby, can go over any terrain, and also has a big compartment to store all his equipment, because everywhere he goes he has to carry an oxygen cylinder and an emergency first aid kit and a suction machine. So yeah, that's just one example. And yeah, the vast majority of all of RaG's families are still living in isolation and have been for months. So and of course the need for equipment never really goes away. We've got families applying for seizure monitors, suction machines, hoists, things like that, things that you use in the house. So yeah, there's still quite a heavy demand for RaG through COVID.
Wow, yeah. Like I actually have a cousin who is in a sort of similar situation. He can't put himself in any danger towards COVID, so he would have to self-isolate. I can't imagine how difficult that must be for people. So it's really good to have charities like yourself be there even in times of these, and taking the correct, like guidelines and restrictions to still provide for these people even in times when they desperately need it. So yeah, that's a really nice thing. And following on from that, we obviously at Herts we're doing a RaG challenge, which I know I've discussed with you about briefly and stuff, but we're basically doing a challenge where it's called the 312 challenge. So the whole area of Hertfordshire is 312 kilometres, so we're challenging students to do things related to the number 312, and that can mean like doing reading 3 books in 12 days, or running 312 kilometres, or cycling 31.2 kilometres, stuff like that.
That's a great idea for a challenge.
Yeah, thank you. And it's finishing up on the 7th of December, and we are getting people to fundraise £50 in an individual thing. Or obviously, if they can get higher, perfect. But we were just wondering, what does £50 do for something in RaG? Like, what would £50 go towards in your case?
I mean, like I said, we'll provide kind of anything really that counts as a basic essential need. So especially during COVID, a lot of our families are, people are losing work left, right, and centre, and certainly those who have been more affected by it and have lost out on income are really struggling to afford even some of the most basic supplies. So things like nappies or fresh bedding or clothing. Many of the children that we support suffer with incontinence or frequent vomiting, and in these kind of scenarios it can be hugely expensive and in some cases completely devastating for families to constantly wash clothes and bedding, and eventually they've just become soiled beyond use. And when they're also trying to maintain a perfect temperature in the house at all times, then we do get applications for that. Things like specialist bibs as well for children, video monitors as well. They can be purchased for £50. So for children who have epilepsy, there's many different severities of epilepsy, and having a monitor, and that just, so that the family are kind of constantly aware. If a child was to have a seizure during the night, then they would be alerted to that, and not only would that kind of guarantee the child is safe during the night, but it will also really help the parents and their kind of mental health, and reduce some of the stress, because they'll know that if there was a child is to have a seizure, then they would be alerted and they'll be able to provide treatment straight away.
Oh yeah, that's really good. I think a lot of people, whenever they do fundraise, they kind of want to know where that money's going, and they want to know that it's actually making an impact. So I feel like knowing that it's going to stuff like that, which will not only help the child, but it will also help the parents or the carers of that child be able to actually be okay in that situation, I think is such a lovely thing. So that's really nice that that money would be going to something that's genuinely very important and honestly crucial to this point. And I was just
Definitely, I
wondering,
think.
obviously, the RaG challenge, it's, it obviously it's going to be really good, and we've already fundraised over £600, which is incredible. But we, it doesn't stop there. It doesn't. It's like we've still got a full year, and it's not only about fundraising, but it's also about giving back to the community. So I was just wondering maybe if there are any volunteering opportunities, or maybe some things that people can do to help outside of this RaG challenge, because we want people to continuously support you guys, because we think the work that you do is amazing. So I was just wondering whether there are any other opportunities, or maybe fundraising events that you guys do that people can get involved with as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're always happy to work with students in RAG societies and things, and provide opportunities. Obviously, during COVID, it's been slightly different, because we've taken people in our office before, and sort of helping with that kind of thing. But with our office closed, that's not as possible. But certainly things like raising awareness. We have some people volunteering recently. They're making Christmas cards and sending them to us to send to our families as well. But certainly, I would say for anyone who's interested in taking up some sort of further volunteering opportunities with React, to get in touch with us, send me an email, or send an email to reactcharity.org, and we can certainly find something.
Okay, awesome. I think just on like a final note, I think it's just important to realize how important charity in general is as well, and not like, and just to see how COVID has really affected it, and why we need support from people now more than ever. I was just wondering, obviously from you as someone as part of a charity, if you could just give me a bit of information about that, because we think we want people to get involved as much as they can, because these things are so crucial.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely understand. It has been a real struggle for families. I mean, through this time, we try to focus more on what our families are going through than what React is going through. But it's undeniable that the past few months for React, and for all charities, I would say, it's been incredibly difficult, because previously, before COVID, we would be relying on funding and income through things like challenge events, like the London Marathon, the British 10K, people doing all these sort of mass participation things. And also we have our own events as well. So we did have an event planned for September, a big charity ball, and of course that can't go ahead. We don't know when it will go ahead. We're hoping that next year we should have a new event, but nothing is really in the pipeline yet, because you can't really plan for these things with what's going on at the moment. But yeah, certainly we have seen a big kind of drop off in the funding we've received. So it's been a struggle. So we've received a lot of volunteers who have come up with some amazing ideas to safely fundraise, and it's incredible what people can get done. We've had people giving lectures about backgammon, and asking for donations through that. So there's a whole array of things you can do to get involved, and I would definitely say it's more important now than ever when it comes to fundraising. I would say don't be put off if you don't see an event like a Tough Mudder or something because of COVID. There are so many things you can do, and I would say any money you do raise will make more of a difference now than it ever would before, because it goes to our families who are also struggling, and also it helps to keep the charity going so that we can carry on assisting those families.
No, I completely agree with what you just said there about every penny honestly really counts, and especially in these times, a lot of smaller charities a lot of charities that I've heard of that they've now had to close because of COVID, and they just haven't been getting support. And with recent news of the government's cuts on international charities as well, it's really insane what's going on right now. So yeah, definitely. And I think just a message to any students who watch this as well, I think it's really important to note that you don't have to just do what RaG does or what React does in terms of organising events. You can definitely do anything you want outside of your own time. You can honestly come up with anything, like the whole lectures on backgammon, just random things to raise any form of money. It really does contribute, and it's just something fun for you to do and distract yourself. You've also got to think about your mental health as well, and I think doing stuff like charity work and being involved, it really does, knowing that you're helping a child and their families be able to deal with these really horrible situations. I think it really does put a smile on your face, and it makes you feel a lot better as well. So I definitely recommend for anyone to get involved with RaG or get involved with just doing your own things to raise money for React. But yeah, I was just wondering, Conor, if you had any final thoughts or things that you wanted to say to anyone.
No, I just want to say a huge thank you on behalf of the charity. We feel very privileged to have been chosen as your locally supported charity, and we wanted to kind of help you guys as much as possible to make this as successful for everyone as well. I was also wondering, how are you guys getting on with being a student and COVID? And I'm really impressed with all the work you're doing through RaG. Did you kind of how difficult was that to plan for when you kind of stepped into this role?
I mean, to be fair, with Herts RaG, it's only really just started up now. Like, I remember when we took over the Instagram, the last post on it was from like mid 2016. So it's really not been about at all. Yeah, the SU have pretty much had to try and do it. So we're now trying to set up again as a student society. But yeah, it has been quite difficult, but we obviously want as many members as possible. So if you're interested, if you've seen this, please don't hesitate to email RaG. I think it's rag@hertfordshire.su. Yeah, just message us if you want to get involved, or DM us on Instagram at Herts RaG. That'd be really cool. But yeah, I mean, with events, it's obviously difficult because you want to get involved with people, and with charity, I feel like face-to-face events are so much better for getting as much money as possible. But with this RaG challenge, so the person I work with is Lizzie, who was on the Zoom call a couple of weeks ago, and we did not expect so many people to get involved and donate. So we're honestly so amazed. We set the target for the RaG challenge to be £312, and now we're thinking of maybe we could potentially raise £1,000 already just from this one event, which we're absolutely amazed by. So I think as much as it's been difficult to kind of arrange events virtually, and it doesn't really have that same pull effect for people, I think the students' generosity has really shown through these times, and I think it's just provided us with a lot of faith in humanity.
Brilliant.
Yeah, no, it's been really nice. So that's definitely something that as much as it's difficult, it's definitely been worth it already. And now that we're getting a lot more support, I think, and a lot more awareness, I think it will get a lot easier, and we can hopefully, fingers crossed for semester B, we can hopefully do some more actual events, proper events, to raise even more money for you guys. So yeah, that's kind of how I feel.
You're doing a great job.
Yeah, thank you. I'm very much trying my hardest, but yeah, no, obviously you guys are doing a fantastic job as well. So I'll probably end the recording there. So thank you, everyone, and this is
thank you very much.
supportive for you. Thanks.